Christmas at Red Butte by L.M. Montgomery, Part 3. When Theodora went up to her little room, her face was very thoughtful. She took a small box from her table and carried it to the window. In it was a very pretty little gold locket hung on a narrow blue ribbon. Theodora held it tenderly in her fingers and looked out over the moonlit prairie with a very sober face. Could she give up her dear locket? The locket Donald had given her just before he started for the Klondike? She had never thought she could do such a thing. It was almost the only thing she had to remind her of Donald. Handsome, merry, impulsive, warm-hearted Donald, who had gone away 4 years ago with a smile on his bonny face and splendid hope in his heart. "Here's a locket for you, gift-o-God," he had said gaily. He had such a dear, loving habit of calling her by the beautiful meaning of her name. A lump came into Theodora's throat as she remembered it. "I couldn't afford a chain, too, but when I come back, I'll bring you a rope of Klondike nuggets for it." Then he had gone away. For 2 years, letters had come from him regularly. Then he wrote that he had joined a prospecting party to a remote wilderness. After that was silence, deepening into anguish of suspense that finally ended in hopelessness. A rumor came that Donald Prentice was dead. None had returned from the expedition he had joined. Theodora had long ago given up all hope of ever seeing Donald again. Hence, her locket was doubly dear to her. But Aunt Elizabeth had always been so good and loving and kind to her. Could she not make the sacrifice for her sake? Yes, she could and would. Theodora flung up her head with a gesture that meant decision. She took out of the locket the bits of hair, her mother's and Donald's, which it contained. Perhaps a tear or two fell as she did so, and then hastily donned her warmest cap and wraps. It was only 3 miles to Spencer. She could easily walk it in an hour, and as it was Christmas Eve, the shops would be open late. She must walk, for Ned could not be taken out again, and the mare's foot was sore. Besides, Aunt Elizabeth must not know until it was done. As stealthily as if she were bound on some nefarious errand, Theodora slipped downstairs and out the house. The next minute, she was hurrying along the trail in the moonlight. The great, dazzling prairie was around her. The mystery and splendor of the northern night all about her. It was very calm and cold, but Theodora walked so briskly that she kept warm. The trail from Red Butte to Spencer was a lonely one. Mr. Lurgan's house, halfway to town, was the only dwelling on it. When Theodora reached Spencer, she made her way at once to the only jewelry store the little town contained. Mr. Benson, its owner, had been a friend of her uncle's, and Theodora felt sure he would buy her locket. Nevertheless, her heart beat quickly and her breath came and went uncomfortably fast as she went in. Suppose he wouldn't buy it. Then there would be no Christmas for the children at Red Butte. End of part 3. So, what do we know now, and how have our perceptions changed? Well, this section, to me, serves the purpose of increasing our respect and admiration for Theodora. So we hope that she'll be rewarded for her act of selflessness in selling the locket that her brother Donald gave her. So her brother Donald left for the Klondike to search for gold, and he joined an expedition that was never heard from again. And because it's been so long, she believes him to be dead. And she has this tension between loyalty and love for her brother who is dead and loyalty and love for Mrs. Martin and her cousins who are living. And this is something that I think we as humans often grapple with in many different ways. So we sometimes cling to very prosaic, everyday objects that to us represent our loved one. And it's interesting that we do this because we can make tiny idols of these possessions. An idol wants to be served and cherished and petted. But a gift is the opposite. Its entire purpose is to serve others, and Theodora refuses to idolize the locket when she can use it to bestow goodness on her family. And we respect her for that. We know that that's not easy. I mean, imagine having to give up a precious keepsake of your own. It would be really hard. So we learn that Theodora's name means gift o' God. Gift to God. So why include that detail? Well, it could be just to show us Donald's personality, that he was the kind of brother who would call her by a nickname. But I suspect that it's more than that, because Montgomery could have chosen any name with any meaning. And she could have chosen not to even mention the meaning, but she does here. And I think it's because the whole story is revolving around gifts for the kids. Will Santa Claus come and bring gifts? So Theodora's name means gift of God. So to me, there's a comparison between gifts and gifts of God. So a gift is an object that you give to someone else. A gift of God is like a godsend, something divine. So Theodora is willing to give up an earthly gift that her brother gave her in order to be a gift of God or a godsend to her family. And that is very beautiful. So, what are we curious about now? Well, why be so secretive about it? Why is Theodora sneaking off? Why doesn't she tell Aunt Elizabeth what she's doing? Well, most likely because the good woman would try to stop her and blame herself again for making Theodora even consider parting with her beloved treasure. So there's that. And then, I'm a little curious. Will Aunt Elizabeth wake up and find Theodora gone and think something terrible happened? So that could be a possible complication. Another thing that we're all curious about, of course, is will Mr. Benson, the jeweler, buy the locket? So that leads us to our third question. Where do we think the story is headed? Well, if Mr. Benson does buy the locket and he offers enough money for it, well, then Theodora will be able to buy things for the kids for Christmas and it will work out nice. But will the story end there without any further complication? We don't know. If he doesn't buy the locket or he doesn't offer enough, then what will Theodora do next? And there is a third option, which is that Theodora somehow gets the money or the gifts that she needs without having to part with the locket. This would be kind of like that fantasy scenario we were talking about on day one, where everything works out and it would be awesome, but perhaps a bit too tidy for us as readers. We might not want it to wrap up so perfectly. So we will see tomorrow, day 4, what happens next. See you then.